The first thing I remember is the ceiling. Not standing up and looking at it, not lying in bed, half awake, watching the morning light move across it, just the ceiling. Suddenly there, as if I had been placed beneath it by someone else's hands. The floor beneath me was cold, tile, hard in the way that only floors are hard when your body has been against them long enough to forget softness. My mouth tasted of copper and something faintly sweet, something I couldn't name, something that didn't belong there. I tried to move my arm. It answered slowly, the way a word answers when you've forgotten how to say it. And then, her feet, bare on the tile, 6 inches from my face, still, perfectly still. I lifted my eyes. She was standing over me with the expression of someone watching a pot of water, waiting to see if it would boil. No alarm. No hands at her mouth. No sharp inhale. Just watching. She said something then. 4 words, delivered the way you'd read a grocery list. You weren't supposed to wake up yet. Let me tell you about her before I tell you about what she did. Because that's how betrayal works. It requires a before. It requires something real to hollow out. She was, and I mean this without any revision, the most attentive person I had ever been close to, not in a suffocating way, not in a way that made you feel watched, in the way that a well-designed room makes you feel held. You don't notice the architecture. You only notice that you feel safe. Friends used to say it. At dinner parties, in passing, with that specific cadence people use when they're complimenting you, but really, they're confessing their own longing. You two are different. You can feel it. We were different. Or I believe we were. She cooked. She cooked the way some people pray, with attention, with ritual, with a closed door and specific music. She insisted on it. I thought, at first, that it was love. Later I would think something else entirely. But at the time, love. Obvious, simple love. She handled my medications, my vitamins. She'd set them out each morning beside a glass of water and whatever she'd made. And there was something in that small act, that arrangement of small things, that made me feel cared for in a way I hadn't been since childhood. I trusted her with my body. That sentence, when I say it now, sounds naive. It wasn't naive. It was reasonable. It was the most human thing a person can do, place themselves in the hands of someone who says, I will not hurt you. The tiredness started without announcement. Not the tiredness of a hard week or the dull ache of winter. Something different, something with depth to it. I would sit down in the middle of the afternoon and wake up 3 hours later in the same chair, unable to account for the time between. Brain fog. That's what I called it when I said it out loud. I've been foggy lately. Work stress. Poor sleep. I had explanations the way a sinking ship has lifeboats, assembled quickly, lowered into the water, trusted to hold. My hands started to shake on certain mornings, subtle. The kind of tremor you only notice when you're holding something still. I lost a Thursday once. I have no other way to say it. I woke up and it was Friday. The dishes in the sink suggested I had eaten. My work laptop showed that someone had closed it at 11 p.m. I had no memory of any of it. I told her about it that morning over coffee. The mug was warm in my hands, and the coffee tasted faintly different than usual. Just a shade off, like a song played in the wrong key. And I mentioned the lost Thursday, and she tilted her head and said softly, You've been working yourself to the bone. You need rest. And I believed her. I poured the coffee down my throat. The first thing I noticed, and I say noticed because for a long time it sat just below the surface of noticing, in that uncomfortable half space where truth lives before you're ready for it, was a pattern. At home, I was diminished, slow, underwater. Away from home, I was not. 2 days at a conference in another city, and I woke at 6 a.m. clear-eyed, sharp, humming with something I hadn't felt in months. I went for a run. I held full conversations. I laughed at things without effort. I attributed it to fresh air, to a change of scene, to the strange mercy of hotel rooms, those anonymous spaces that asked nothing of you. I came home. By the second morning, the fog was back. The pills came next, not my pills. A small orange prescription bottle tucked into the back of the bathroom drawer beneath a travel hairdryer and a box of bandages. No label I recognized, no medication I'd been told about. She was healthy, aggressively, visibly healthy. She exercised. She didn't even take aspirin. I held the bottle up to the light and read the name on the label twice. Her name, the medication, unfamiliar. The prescribing doctor, unfamiliar. I put the bottle back exactly where I'd found it and said nothing. That evening, she made tea. I drank the tea. By 9 o'clock, I was asleep in the chair. A friend visited that weekend. Someone who knew me from before this chapter of my life, who carried the memory of who I used to be, the way old photographs carry light. He looked at me across the table for a long moment and then said, not unkindly, but with the gravity of someone choosing honesty over comfort, You look sedated. Not tired, sedated. There's a difference. I laughed it off. I sat with it for 3 days. And then, because I had become a man who needed to know, I ran a quiet experiment. One morning, I let her prepare breakfast. I did not eat it. I palmed the vitamins. I poured the coffee into the sink when she left the room and refilled the mug with water from the tap. By noon, I felt like myself. The next day, I ate and drank everything she gave me. By noon, I felt like the walls were thick wool. I did this twice more. I needed to be certain. I needed the kind of certainty that doesn't leave room for alternate explanations, for self-deception, for the seductive mercy of, maybe I'm wrong. I was not wrong. The question that followed was the one I couldn't answer. Not, was she, but why? I set up the camera on a Wednesday, a small device, unremarkable. Positioned in the kitchen where it could see the counter, the stove, the space between them, where she always stood when she prepared things for me. That evening, she made tea. She set it in front of me, and I curled both hands around the mug, and I looked at her face, the face I had trusted more than any other face on this earth, and I said, "Thank you," and she kissed my forehead and went to fold laundry in the other room. I poured the tea into the plant on the windowsill. I went to the couch. I closed my eyes. I counted to 40. My breathing slowed. My body went slack. I gave it everything. The parted lips, the stillness, the particular heaviness of someone chemically absent from themselves. I heard her footsteps before I heard anything else. She came into the room the way someone enters a space they believe to be empty. There is a different quality to that movement, looser, purposeful, unbothered by the weight of being observed. She leaned over me, 2 fingers to the inside of my wrist. She was checking my pulse with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done it before. Then, something from her pocket, a phone, and then her voice, low and directed into it. "We need more time. He's not fully gone yet." We. That word, its plural, its conspiracy, moved through me like cold water. I opened my eyes. She saw me. The phone dropped to her side. I have thought about what followed many times. I have tried to remember her face in that moment, and what I find, every time, is not what I expected. There was no panic, no backward step, no hand to the throat, no rush of words, excuses, explanations, the frantic scaffolding that guilt erects in the seconds after exposure. She simply looked at me. And then, slowly, the corners of her mouth moved. Not a smile exactly. Something older than a smile. Something that said, "I knew this was possible. I had made my peace with this possibility." That expression destroyed something in me that the drugging itself had not destroyed. Because the drugging could be pathology, obsession, fear, the twisted logic of a mind in crisis. But that smile was clarity. She had been clear the entire time. The person who had arranged my vitamins each morning, who had kissed my forehead and called it tenderness, who had listened to me describe the brain fog and nodded and said, "You've been working so hard, you need rest." She had been resting me herself, systematically, deliberately, without flinching. What came after is both complicated and simple, the way the end of things usually is. There were calls made that night, rooms left, doors that closed behind me for the last time, authorities, or not, separation, or flight. I'll leave the specifics where they belong, in the particular privacy of survival. What I'll tell you instead is what stayed. The strangest part was not the discovery. The strangest part was the recalibration, the long, disorienting work of standing in your own life and relabeling everything you thought you understood. Every morning I had called love. Every gesture I had called care. Every conversation in which I had felt seen, reviewed now against new light. Held up to the window like currency, checking for the watermark that tells you if it's real. Some of it dissolved entirely. Some of it, and this is the part I find hardest to speak, some of it still looked like love from certain angles. That is the thing about sophisticated deception. It doesn't replace the real thing. It wears it. It moves in it. It smells like it. You can spend years afterward unable to trust your own memory, unable to distinguish between the moments that were true and the moments that were performance, because the performance was so complete. The body remembers being touched and does not remember being tricked. Here is what I've come to understand about the particular form of betrayal I survived. It doesn't arrive in the shape of violence. It doesn't break down your door. It sits across from you at the breakfast table. It hands you a glass of water. It watches you trust it completely, and it does not look away. Betrayal, at its most devastating, arrives disguised as devotion. The person who diminished me did it with the same hands that once held mine. The same voice that said, "I love you," said, "He's not fully gone yet." Both statements came from the same mouth. That is what keeps me awake on certain nights, years removed from that cold kitchen floor. Not the malice, the proximity. The case was documented. The evidence was clear. Consequences followed in the way. Consequences do. slowly, imperfectly, with the bureaucratic weight of institutions that were not built to process this particular shape of harm. But I never learned why. No explanation was given. None was sought in the end, because I came to understand that some answers are not doors, they are just other rooms. What she was planning in the time before I woke up on that tile floor, what needed to happen while I was fully gone, remains in the file marked unknown. I have chosen to leave it there. Some questions, when answered, only make room for worse ones. This has been the Betrayal Archives. I am your archivist, and to this day, I still don't know why.